Howdy rock stars, welcome to this live stream. I'm Lid Shaw and welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you already know about the podcast and everything like that, then you know exactly where you are. And if you don't, and if this is your first time here and you want to learn more about recording, editing, mixing, mastering your best record ever, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Where is it? Down over there a little bit. And drop in a comment, hit the notification bell so you don't miss videos from us here at Recording Studio Rockstars, especially when we go live as well. And then also drop in a comment below and say hello and let us know where you are joining us from in the world. Where are you? Where's your studio? As I go into this, I'm going to take one of my songs and start playing around with it. Shout out to you, Jeremiah. Thanks for jumping in. Going to play around with some of these Boz Digital Labs plugins and kind of dig in and take a look at some more of these plugins. So hang tight. I'm going to lower my video camera just a little bit here too. All right, groovy. And we'll just kind of jump in and play around with this. I already started mixing this song on a previous live stream. This is a song that I actually co-wrote with my daughter called Spring, Spring is an Amazing Thing. And it's a pretty happy tune with a good groove. And you can see we've got drums in here. We've got bass, percussion, a couple of acoustic guitar tracks. There's some organs, some electric guitars, and then vocal tracks down here. My vocal, this one right here is actually a treatment vocal. So this is, oh, you know what? I got to check my sample rate. Let me double check that real quick and make sure that we don't have, nope, I think we're good. I'll double check this, make sure that when I press play on Pro Tools, you guys are getting the right sample, 2448. Groovy. Alex, what's up, dude? That's actually our intern here at the studio, everybody, rock stars. Thomas, shout out. Where are you guys coming in from? Let me know where in the world you are. So let's see, I got vocals here. This one right here is actually a vocal treatment track. So I actually did a bunch of compression and filtered. So it's just sneaking some highs in. Then I got backgrounds. My oldest stepdaughter singing some backgrounds, more BVs from me. And then she sang a couple of oohs, doubling the ooh parts and stuff like that. So I'm going to go keep just digging through and kind of build the mix as I go. If you got questions while I'm going through this and you're curious about these different plugins, just let me know. I'm going to just jump in and play around with this stuff and sort of talk about it as I go. So let me build this mix again, starting with the kick. Also, let me know if this mic is loud enough. You guys are hearing it all right. Let me know if the, I may need to bring my level up a little bit. Let me know if the track is loud enough and if you guys are hearing everything okay. Hopefully everything will be at a good level. What's up, Rich? Joining us from Rochester. Good to see you. Thanks for dropping a comment in there. Thanks, Claudius. All right, good. It sounds good over there. Awesome. So again, I'm just sort of balancing things as I go, just doing a really quick rough mix. And then some of this stuff I already addressed in the last video, and I'll do a quick review for you. And some of these things we'll just keep going on the acoustic guitar, on the electric guitars, and the vocals, and just try some more stuff. Then we'll do some two-mix stuff as well. A lot of times you hear about the concept of top-down mixing, where you start with plugins on your two-mix and you mix into it. I'm going to do it backwards today. I'm going to add that stuff after I kind of address each individual element. No particular reason. It's just how I'm doing it today. All right, so here we are at the second acoustic guitar that doesn't have any plugins on it yet. Let me see what we've got. So on the first guitar, we were doing a little bit of the Boz T-Bone plugin, which gives us, it basically gives us a tilt style EQ. And then we've got low and high pass frequencies that we can use, including cutoff. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. So we've got the high pass frequency right here. Which I guess was off, yeah. And then a low pass frequency, which you can turn on, and you can actually create a bump here. And then you've got a slant EQ, which you can see basically just as you turn to the right, it ducks the lows and boosts the highs, and as you go the other way, it does the same thing in reverse. It's kind of like having a tone knob in an old stereo. And then the frequency, I believe, is the point at which it starts slanting. So yeah, so there you go. So we had a good thing going. Let's see if I've screwed it all up for the other acoustic. And then you've got controls boom and harsh. Let's see what that's all about. Okay, that's pretty subtle there. When I do the harsh one, I feel like it actually kind of adds a little bit of lower mid distortion in there and kind of crunches it up just a little bit. We also have analog mode. Let's see what that does. Again, that's pretty subtle. That's sort of a saturation feature that just kind of thickens the tone a little bit. So it's one of those things where neither one's going to be right. It's just going to be a taste decision when you hear it and see if you like it in there or not. So I'm going to leave it off for now. But let me start by taking these same settings and just peeling them down to the acoustic riff track, which is this one. Okay, so this is like an important riff for the song, and I'm probably going to want to compress this and really make it like speak a lot in the track and have sustain and stuff. Louie, what's up? Shout out to you, man. Thanks for jumping in from Tampa. Awesome. Love it. I was just down in Florida last month. I love it. Didn't get as far as Tampa, but I got down to Orlando. It was super cool. We got some sunshine here in Nashville now. Now Nashville is beautiful spring weather. It feels like Florida did when I was visiting Florida a month or so ago. Okay, just a heads up too, the way I've got my mic set up today, every time I press play on Pro Tools and it's making sound, it's going to make this mic go away, which is great because it means you won't get a weird echo, but it also means I can't talk over it while I'm doing adjustments. So just bear with me. I'm going to like talk, then I'll just press play, I'll make some adjustments, and then I'll try and explain what I did as I go. And if you got questions, just jump into the comments, rock stars, and give a shout, and you know, drop in your questions. Thomas, join us from Stockholm. Awesome, man. Love it. What's the weather like in Stockholm? Is it still cold over there? And you got pouring rain in Vancouver. Awesome. Isn't Vancouver almost a rainforest up there in the northwest part of the coast there? Let me know if that's true. Okay, cool. So this is the Boz Manic compressor, and it has a lot of great features in it. You have up to 6 different compressor styles, each of which sounds somewhat different from the other. They just have different characteristics, and the best way to experience them is to just try them out and see which one you like the sound of. You have an input drive here. You've got your typical attack and release settings. So in this case, I was actually shortening the attack a lot because I felt like the pick was getting through too much and it was a little bit spiky. So if I want to tone that down, I'll shorten the attack so that it grabs that initial spike that's coming through of sound and tries to control it more. Threshold is going to bring down, you can see it down here, it's going to bring, oh, I guess you can't grab it right there. It's going to bring the threshold up and down at which the compression starts to compress. Ratio is how much compression you want to do. You know, typical compression ratios are like, you know, anywhere from 1 to 2, or 2 to 1 rather, up to, excuse me, 6 to 1, 7 to 1. Those are generally on a lot of compressors where you tend to go. You know, you can go as high as 10 to 1 and 20 to 1 on something like a, right on. What's up, Matt? Glad to have you here, dude. Those are typical settings you might explore on something like the Distressor from Empirical Labs, where you can get in some heavy compression. But what's cool about the Manic compressor, of course, is you can go way up high. You can go up to 101, and you can see here is you can just see what's going on. So let me try and explain compression a little bit more to you guys here. So as I bring this threshold up, you see this threshold, this point move right here. This is the knee point. And if I adjust that, you should see that point round out. So if you increase the knee, you're rounding out this edge at which it starts compressing. And so that is like, you know, if you do a hard knee, it's going to do nothing, and then it's going to hit that edge and it's going to grab it and compress really rigidly. And if you do a soft knee, it's going to grab it and compress less rigidly. So yeah, Claudius, you got to check it out. This is Boz Digital Labs, so they're great. And again, I'll drop a link. There should be a link as soon as we're done with this. I'll have a link in the video to bozditallabs.com. In fact, Alex, if you can, man, drop a link in the comments so that these guys can go check out Boz Digital Labs. But Boz Millar makes a bunch of great, interesting plugins. So let me go back to explaining these too. So the knee setting is right there. This is the point at which it starts compressing. At the moment it starts compressing, it's going to look at your ratio and say, well, how much compression do you want me to do? For every 2 you know, units of volume coming in, do you want me to let out only 1 unit of volume? Or for every 100 units of volume coming in, do you want to let out only 1 unit of volume? And that's why this looks like a brick wall when you get into the 100 to 1 ratio, where it's like no matter how hot the level comes in, going up here and up here and up here, it's only going to come out at this level. Then you have this unique feature for Boz Digital Labs called loud relief. And what that does is that says when things, my understanding of it is that when things are transient, they are going to punch through and actually punch through this compression a little bit more. So it's an interesting knob, and it's a great combination where you hey, Alex, drop in a link to bozditallabs.com if you would in there for everybody, all right? Thanks, man. Yeah, this definitely should be Reaper friendly. Boz Digital Labs, I believe, is for AAX, but it's also for VST and for audio units as well. So should be good for Reaper. And you can probably, my understanding about Reaper, of course, is that you can run a lot of plugins there too, which is great. Oh, nice. One mic. Hey, what's up, John? Good to see you, man. Thanks for jumping in. All right, cool. So compression ratio, you can see the angle of that changing as you adjust the ratio setting there, which really will help give you an understanding. And then the loud relief is just going to let it punch through more. I was just messing with it around here where it's like 30 to 1, and then the loud relief. When you use the loud relief button, it's going to let you do more compression than you would normally do with the ratio. So that's just part of the nature of it, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, you also have down here, you have a wet and a dry. So instead of a knob where you have to rotate it to go all the way wet or all the way dry or half and half, which somehow whenever I do those knobs, I always end up feeling like it's never like quite where I wanted, and I have to keep adjusting things. The nice thing about this is it's much more like you're working on a mixing console, and you've got the dry, which is the original Oh, interesting. Yeah, Alex, it's all right. So it's not showing. You can see it. Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for pointing that out. So I guess the comments that I'm seeing don't include the links, but you guys have it in the chat. So that's great. So you can just click through if you want to go check out Boz Digital Labs. But yeah, so here we are. This is like as if you're working on a console. So you have the original signal right here, and then you can compress it and then just blend in the compression. So you can do things like you could turn off this original signal, and you can really dial in your compression, get an extreme sound, which you're digging it, and you think it's doing something cool, but you'd never use it alone like that because it's too freaked out sounding. So let me show you what I mean. All right, cool. So that is super compressed. Now I'm going to bring the compression down, the wet, and I'm going to turn the dry signal on. And this should give us, zero these out. This should give us the dry signal, and then there's an output master fader too. This should sound exactly like the signal coming in with no changes to it. And there you can hear it. So that's the... And there you can hear it. That's the natural guitar sound. Sorry, I have to remember to not talk while it's playing. Now I'm going to play this natural acoustic guitar and start sneaking in the wet signal to see what it sounds like. Okay, so one of the challenges here, of course, is that the original signal is really low level. So let me boost this whole thing up so it sits a little bit more appropriately in the mix, and then we'll sneak in this wet signal one more time. Whoops. That is a little too loud there. All right, so there you get a sense of that. If I was to play this acoustic riff one more time and turn off the dry, you'll hear how it's just the compressed. All right, cool. So I played the just the wet signal, then I added the dry, it gets louder, then I turned off the wet signal, and it goes back to plain Jane without the compression. So that's a pretty cool feature with this guy. What else was I using here? Yeah, right. So I was using the T-Bone Boz on the way in, and that is just a kind of a cool EQ you can use. The other EQs that we were exploring from Boz earlier is, yes, Kevin, it's basically the same as parallel compression. It's exactly what it is. It's just that it's built into, sorry, let me go back to Manic Compressor. It's built in to one plugin, so you don't have to set up any complicated routing to do your parallel compression, and you don't have to you don't even have to really understand it. You just start compressing with it, try the faders until you get what you like. And quite honestly, that's all any of the pros are doing with parallel compression too. You know, it's always a question of just dialing the knobs until you get something you dig. And if at the point you really like it and you're not exactly sure why it sounds great that way, who cares? You got the sound you love. So yeah, it's a cool feature. All right, so let me show you the other EQ from Boz that we were exploring. I don't remember if I used it on any of the drum stuff. Was that it? Yeah, okay, so this is part of the Boz Signature series, the David Bendeth series that Boz did with David, called Plus 10 dB, and it is, I believe, an EQ that's coming from a Ward Beck console, which was a Canadian Neve. It was called the Canadian Neve, so obviously it didn't have any relation to Neve, but you could dial in some highs here, and we were like pulling out some lows with this kick and stuff. So that's another great EQ choice for equalizing your tracks if you didn't want to use this guy. In fact, let's try that. Let's go to this let's go to this riff one more time, and I'll pull up an alternate EQ. All right, you're gonna see the embarrassment of plugins here. Okay, so Hoser was our EQ as well, also from the Ward Beck. In fact, the plus 10 dB might not be the Wardbeck. That may just be, is another modeled brand. But let me try this plugin right here and we'll see how this sounds. And I think the XT is the stereo. So I think if I just do this, I get the mono. Yeah, okay, cool. So I'll turn off this guy. And you can hear the raw track through compression first. Which sounds pretty good as is. But it sounds like it shows a pretty bright microphone for this stuff too, because it's pretty thin on the top. It didn't hurt the final mix of this song, but it seems kind of bright to me right now. So let's pull up the hoser and play around with that EQ a little bit and see what we get. Okay, cool. So now you'll notice on the hoser here that we have a low frequency booster cut, and it's actually missing the Q knob on this knob and on this, which probably is a nod to the genuine, Wardbeck unit that they were using, that it probably had the knobs fall off. You can make it be a bell curve, or you can, oh no, I'm sorry, here it goes. This explains it. So if you turn it on to a shelf EQ, then you don't need the Q knob, so they just take the knob off. That's clever. And if you put it here, then it turns off the shelf and it's back to a bell curve, and then you can adjust it for a very narrow Q or a wide Q. That should be wide if it's the low knob. But one of the things that this doesn't have is a filter. It doesn't have a high pass filter or a low pass filter. So let's put that in. Let's go look for some Boz solutions for that. I'm not really feeling yeah, you're right, Kevin. It's because the shelf function was on. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not feeling like a strong need for a shelf. I mean, for a high pass filter, but typically you might want one, and you may want to do things like boost this low way up, but still filter out some of the lower lows. So let's see what we got from Boz. So I believe Bark of the Dog is going to be an option for us. Let's go give that a listen. Okay, so what this is doing is this is cutting off the lows below 44 hertz, and then it's actually boosting at that 44 hertz. It's sort of doing a resonant boost before the cutoff, so you can get a little bit more tone around the cutoff frequency, which can be a pretty cool thing when you're trying to control your low end. Sometimes you want to make sure that you're not getting any sub-subs, but you're wanting to also have some ability to kind of sculpt some tone back in at that cutoff point, so it's not too subtle. There's also a passive mode and a combo. Let's see how those sound. I don't know that we're going to hear a big difference. This isn't an instrument that has a lot of low end in it. We can go try this on the kick if we want, and on the bass guitar too, but let's see if this does anything on the acoustic. I actually like the passive sound. I can't tell you exactly why, but that one just seems to sound nicer to me. So, all right, cool. So let's move. Let's look at these two acoustics again. Actually, let's just keep moving. I'm going to go. Here's last time we were messing around with the organ track, and we were looking at provocative as sort of a way to maybe widen out a mono organ track and exploring that option. So here's the organ track that's mono. And then here's adding provocative on there. Martin, what's up, dude? Good to see you, man. So you can hear that immediately made the organ sound wider. It also makes it sound a little bit swimmy. So let's look at some of these settings and see how we can control really the effect it's having on it. We've got pitch here, which is taking the, I believe the left side is being pitched down a little bit and the right side is being pitched up a little bit. And so this is how many cents that's being pitched. So if you come down to 1, it's hardly doing any pitch shifting on those sides. And then this delay is delaying those sides as well. What this plugin does is it takes the dry signal up the middle, and then the wet signal is a copy of it on the left, a copy of it on the right. The one on the left is pitched down a little, the one on the right is pitched up a little, and then the delay knob here is taking both of those and, well, you can't see my hand, sorry. It's taking both of those and delaying them both. Here, let me see if I can do a bigger video for myself here. Maybe that'll help. As long as I'm not covering up anything on the screen. Oops, nope, that's down low. But I can do this. Watch this. You guys are seeing video manipulation in real time. Gotta love it. All right, cool. Groovy. There we go. All right, so now you can see my hand. So it's taking the copy of the signal on the left, copy of the signal on the right, pitching the left one down a little bit, pitching the right one up a little bit, and then the delay will delay them, maybe that's the wrong direction, delay them slightly to happen after the drive signal in the middle to help give a little more space too. So we're going to adjust all these and see what we get. So here is the organ through provocative, which is really designed to be a vocal widening trick, but a lot of times vocal widening tricks just become good widening tools that you can use on any instrument where you want to just add a little bit more width and depth to it. We'll start with the dry signal, which is right here. And then we'll add this wet button, and I'll start bringing it in. I'm going to start with this dry signal at 0, actually. And then we'll start bringing in the wet signal. And again, we have 1 cent going on here. We have a delay as shortest and the least amount of pitch shift, and then the complete frequency response. So this is how much we're actually affecting for the effect. So we could just treat, you know, the highs where we're cutting off everything below 3,594 hertz, and it goes all the way up to 20K, or we could do a narrow band. We could just take stuff in the mid range, for example, and treat the hell out of it and add that in. But we're going to try full frequency for now. All right, that's pretty cool. So again, these are the lowest settings on this guy, and I do have the width all the way up. If you bring this in, it's like taking your left and your right panning for those effects and just bringing them in closer. But this is as wide as it will go, but the least amount of settings. And if you listen while I do this again, listen to me increase the wet knob, and you'll notice how it, in a really nice way, it subtly just adds some space and depth to the organ without changing the quality of the organ or the tonality, and it doesn't freak it out, in other words. So watch this. So right there, I turned off the dry and you're only hearing the wet. So that could be a cool treatment too, where if the dry signal is not in there, you're less likely to get the swimmy effect, but you might get a wider effect on this organ just by only using the wet signal. All right, since I can't talk over the track, I'm just kind of clicking the buttons a few times. Hope you guys can follow me and see what's being changed there. But I was dropping the effect in and out so you could hear it go from kind of mono organ to wider. So that's a really cool plugin. That's very useful and very handy for a lot of instruments where you might want to just sort of widen things out a little bit. Now let's go to the electric guitars and see what we've got. And actually, let's see what our mix is sounding like up to this point. Cool. Now we'll go to the electric guitars and see what they're doing. And this organ, by the way, that is my Hammond M101 through the Leslie 147, and I think I just used a mono mic. Might have just put my U67 up next to it or something, but I am using the speed control, which you can hear on there. Yeah, thanks for the comment, Kevin. Yep, I agree with you. A lot of times setting up these simple effects can take quite a lot of routing and quite a lot of complicated stuff, which is a real pain in the ass to have to set up. And then it's a pain in the ass to have to tweak, and it's nice to just go in and do a couple of knobs to make adjustments. So, you know, in this case, it's not a pain in the butt because it's all built into the one plugin. But let me increase the size on these electrics and we'll see what we got. All right, cool. So now these electrics, as I recall, I was playing my Vantage guitar, which is a really, I don't know, it's like a kind of an off-brand electric, but it's a through body neck, really nice piece of wood, and it has metal nut on the end, which is a little bit weird. So it's a little bit of a tricky guitar to play, but it's got humbuckers in it and switches for phase, so it's a very versatile guitar. You can do a lot of different settings on it, and it can be pretty fun to play around with. I'm pretty sure it's a guitar from the 70s. I recall that I did direct guitar on this, and I was going in through, oh man, what is it? Oh, it's going to come back to me here. It was my amp simulator plugin that I haven't used in years and years, that I used to use in an older version of Pro Tools. Something amp. Help me out, rock stars, if you remember which one I'm thinking of. But it was a very common amp simulator before we had a million amp simulators. Long before like Pro Tools 11 and stuff like that. But anyway, so this should be just a totally digital guitar sound where I'm plugged in direct and getting an amp sound within Pro Tools. Yeah, Kevin, it wasn't Sans Amp. It was the other one. It was I'll think of the name here in a minute. It wasn't Sans Amp, but you can hear it's actually pretty damn good tone. Great reverb too. Claudius, thanks for joining us. Sorry, I just hit the mic. It wasn't the Line 6 Pod, Drew. Good guess though. It was an in the computer simulator, and it wasn't Amp Farm either. So keep coming with the suggestions. When we hit it, I will know it for sure. All right, dig it. So let's see here. I'm not sure what I want to do to these yet. I'll probably put a low cut on there just to have one, mess around with it if I want. So let's go put Bark of the Dog on there. And then I'll probably put an EQ on there in case I want it. So let's go put the Hoser, because why not? And then let's go try... Let's have a compressor at the ready in case we want it. So we'll go, let's try Manic compressor. Where are we with that? There we go. So just so you may have noticed that, Rockstars, but there are 2 lists that will host the Boz Digital Labs plugins when you do the. And no, it wasn't Guitar Rig, but Guitar Rig was one of the ones I was messing with. So keep guessing. We'll get there. Thanks, B. Robertson. Appreciate it. What's B stand for? Boz was explaining to me that, you know, for one reason or another, he had... No, it wasn't Sound Toys. It was before Sound Toys. We're talking about... We're going back like 8 years here. So it was whatever we were using 8 years ago. And probably 7 years. Something like that. So the 2 different category folders for the plugins, here I'll show you right here, are BDL. We'll have some of them, and Boz Digital Labs will have some of them. I believe Boz is trying to move all the new plugins over to Boz Digital Labs. So soon you will just go to Boz Digital Labs as a category, and you'll see all the plugins there. In the meantime, I've learned that if you try and take one of these previous versions of a plugin and then repackage it so that it shows up here, then that would break everybody's sessions on who were still using the older ones. So he has to do it in a way that carefully creates the new version of it that goes in here. So we may have like, I'm not 100% on this. Yeah, it was Amplitude. Thank you. Who said that? Drew, you got it. You nailed it, man. You nailed it. You win, dude. Thank you for dropping that in. Amplitude was the plugin. And I remember digging that one. Guitar Rig was very cool too, but Amplitude was super useful, seemed to work really well. I mean, now we've got tons of options, right? So actually, drop in a comment below and tell, you know, which ones are you using now? Thanks, Brian. Shout out to you. Let us know which ones are your favorite guitar amp simulators now. And who knows, maybe we'll convince... Maybe we'll convince Boz to build a guitar amp simulator too. But meanwhile, he does have a great distortion and a tone simulator, which you could probably use like an amp simulator with Big Clipper and Little Clipper. I don't know if I have Little Clipper installed, do I? No, I think I just have Big Clipper installed. I'll need to put in Little Clipper too. But let's try that actually. Let's listen to Big Clipper on a guitar and see what we get. So I'm going to turn off the other plugins and we will mess around with this and just see what it does to an electric guitar. Might be a mess. Actually, that sounds killer. Wow. I'm not even messing with any of these other you know, controls yet, but just messing with the push and the pull, it kind of just squishes the guitar together, but has a really nice, almost amp-like tone. Let's keep messing with it and see what we get. Right, so that starts to get pretty fuzzy. Would be great for the right kind of part. If you want a super fuzzed out guitar, you could probably just plug a guitar in direct into your DAW and then just go through this plugin and make this your distortion. So these are different blend knobs, and I guess you get clip then limit, or this one is limit then clip maybe, and this one is, it's a little hard for me to see the screen on this. I'm going to zoom in. That might mess you guys up, but this looks like maybe this does a crossover, and then this one, I don't know what it does. I'll have to ask Boz what those specifically do, but really you would just mess with them anyway and just see which ones you like the sound of. Is Bias Amp one of the ones you like to use, Brian? Let us know, Rockstars. Let us know which what your favorite amp simulator plugins are. Hold on, I'm just gonna mess with this. Here's the output. So if you want to really crank things but don't want it to get too hot in the output, you can do that. Okay, so that's not the sound I'm going to go for in a mix like this, but that is a super cool tone. I love playing around with stuff like that. So it'd be really fun to, like, you know, for sound design and freaking stuff out, this plugin would be really, really handy. Let's not push it. Let's try to do the pull knob, and which is basically limiting, and see what kind of sounds we get. So that actually has a really cool, again, these are extreme sounds, but that has a really cool high end, you know, like I could see some great kind of vintage treble booster guitar tones sounding cool, messing around with it, with that kind of thing. All right, so let's move on. Let me explore some of these other plugins on the guitar. We'll come back to that if we want it. So here's Bark of the Dog. I got people texting me. I forgot to turn my phone off. Sorry, Rockstars. Okay, so that's pretty subtle, but I don't mind that. I could probably just shave off a little bit of the low lows right there and not miss it. I will match that on the other track too, because I'm sure, I know these were the same settings from guitar part to guitar part. And then let me explore, whoops, I'm messing this up a little bit here. Big clipper needs to go here, and hoser needs to go there. So Brian, you said I got it free with something I bought. Oh, bias amp. They want you to buy more amp sims, right? I prefer guitar rig. I have Amplitube also. Same deal as bias. They don't include a lot of amps. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these companies, they got to stay in business, so they come up with different models, whether it's subscriptions, whether it's buy it once and use it everywhere, or whether you need to do the kind of in-app purchase model. I don't know what I think about it. I do know that I really find it irritating if you're being... I find it irritating if you pull up a plugin and it's showing you an option, then you go to use it and it's not there. It reminds me of my cable television here with Xfinity, where I've got all these million channels and I'm like, oh, that looks cool. And I click on it and then it tells me I have to subscribe. So I don't want that in my plugins. I also find it irritating if it's bugging me too much to upgrade. It's trying to sell me on it, because obviously we take our workflow pretty seriously when we're creating. Oh, I'm gonna turn this off. We take our workflow seriously when we're creating, and so we don't want to be interrupted. Don't want to have your phones dinging either. So those are two things. That said, I don't mind the idea necessarily of buying new plugins one bit at a time. So like when a plugin company does a sale and like one plugin is available and I just decide if I want that and I get that and I kind of, you know, end up with more plugins because of that, it's great. And I also, you know, you quickly can have way too many plugins to know what to do with them all anyway. So you don't need like 5 million options at once, because that's a little overwhelming. So those are my thoughts on that. I don't believe Boz does any kind of, you know, in-your-face marketing stuff at all with any of this. So he's really just a cool dude like the rest of us, who's making these cool plugins and trying to come up with unique and interesting tools for us to use. So he's going to be on the podcast very soon. So make sure you catch that episode when I have Boz Millar come on to talk about designing plugins and all the stuff he's done. And I think you'll really enjoy hearing from him. So Steve jumps in and says, Overloud TH3 seems to be great for my guitarist who's really anti-plugin. A live player uses Marshall and has pedals built up over 40 years. Nice. I like to hear that, because then you know you're trusting somebody who has like a really keen ear for tone, and they're just not going to put up with something that doesn't remind them of what a real amp does. But at the same time, I will also point out that when we live in a digital world, I mean, you know, if Trent Reznor was only looking for sounds that sounded like real guitar amps, we probably wouldn't have had so many interesting sounds come out of Nine Inch Nails, you know. So there's a ton of music that's being made these days that is sort of impossible music, you know, and it's able to be made because it's done in DAWs and it's done using plugins and pushing the envelope and coming up with extreme sounds and just running with whatever extreme sound you come up with. So I totally encourage that. All right, let me keep jumping through here on the guitar, and we'll see what other sounds we get. That sounds pretty cool. Let's look at the Manic compressor. I dig that right there. So let's see, what did I do? I brought up the input drive a little bit. Sometimes just making things sound a little louder when you're mixing helps you mentally process where you're going with it. So that's cool. We got some more comments here. Kev says it's an F major or F sharp, right? I think that might be right, Kevin. I apologize. I recorded this many years ago, and I haven't picked up my guitar in a minute to see what I was in. But I do remember having a capo on this. And I wrote it in a D chord formation, as I recall, but I may have capoed up one fret. And I might have done that so that I could sing it in a range that was good for my voice. All right, cool. So here we go. I just pulled this up. I pulled up the input knobs. I adjusted the attack and the release a little bit so that it kind of opening the attack up, let it just a little bit of the bite and the detail through, and extending the release kept it from being harsh by kind of smoothing it out, keeping it compressed a little longer when it compressed. Actually, if I did those first, I wasn't getting any effect yet because I didn't have the threshold and the ratio up. But those would be reasonable ways to think about the attack and the release. Then the ratio, I just went up a little bit of the ratio, and then the threshold, and then the loud relief. And honestly, as you can see, I started out with the mode, so I picked the vintage because I like the tone of that. So, you know, you can kind of work this way, although it's a little bit back-asswards, because if it's cool to start with the mode first and see which one you like, and it's cool to go for the input drive and see how it's like kind of hitting the tone here, assuming that it's having any effect on that, which I think it does in this case. I don't think it's just a pure level. But then if you go left to right, you're doing attack and release, and it has no effect yet because there's no compression going on. So really you would probably want to bring up the ratio a little bit, then adjust the threshold, then do attack and release, then go back and adjust these guys again. And that might be a reasonable way to go through the knobs and find which setting you like the most. And then loud relief, just kind of bringing that up and seeing if it sort of lets it breathe again in a cool way. And then I went down here and added the dry and kind of snuck that in. So that's certainly not the only way to do it. You can do it any way you want, but that was the way that I just tried it. That seemed to make sense. Also up here you have the beef knob, which I believe has to do with the sensor circuit, and it's pretty subtle when I've messed with it. I find it almost hard to hear any difference, but in this case I think I like thin, so who knows, man. Sometimes you just hit these knobs and they may not be doing as much as you think they do, but if it makes you feel good about moving forward, there's no problem with that either, because we're just trying to stay in a creative mindset and keep moving. So don't sweat the details too much, you know. Get something you dig and keep rocking. All right, so let me copy these down here again. Let's see what happens when we double them. Sometimes when you get a setting on one guitar, pan it, get a double going, pan it the other way, and then you listen to them both, you can discover that they sound like it's a little bit too much of whatever you had going. So if they're bright, it can be a little too bright, or if they're compressed, it can be a little too compressed, and then you have to back them off a little bit because now you have twice as many instruments playing. Again, I'm not listening in the mix here. I'm just listening to the guitars, but I'm also trying to make it really easy to hear what's going on. I'm going to back off some of the high boost here. And then let's hear this in the track. So here's another funny detail. I noticed that I have guitar A, and then C here stands for comp, so I would have comped this track from a whole bunch of takes. You can see them right there. And then this is guitar B, C, and again, I played the guitar again and then comped that, I believe. But typically, just because of the way I think left to right, I usually take my first guitar and pan it left and my second guitar and pan it right. But in this case, for some reason, I did it the other way. And it probably had something to do with the way they were sitting with the rest of the stuff. I'm not sure what you meant by agree totally, Steve. Maybe you were just talking about the concept of, you know, dealing with the knobs, but not always getting, you know, too hung up on whether or not you perfectly know how you're using it. But also, thanks, Kevin, for the nice tone compliment. Appreciate it. And again, I agree with you, Kevin. I actually was totally happy with this tone and very surprised that I used my freaky guitar, the Vantage, which I rarely use. I had it capoed way up high, and I was using Amplitude for a digital amp, and I ended up getting a tone I really liked. So that really surprised me. And it's really encouraging too, because it's nice to know that, you know, that there's a lot of possibilities and you don't have to just go have the most expensive of everything to get something really groovy going. All right, so let me try bringing in the vocals now and see what we got. And again, what do we do on these vocals last time? We added some EQ here, right? Yeah, we did some EQ. Again, the way this one works, the plus 10 dB, is when the knob is all the way down, it's not boosting, and when you turn it up, it's either boosting when it's in peak, or it's removing signal if you go to dip. So it sort of inverts the signal. It's either adding more of a frequency or it's cutting it. And then these green knobs down here tell you which frequency you're actually dialing in. And then the power knob is, guess what? Power. That's right. All right, and then so we were taking the EQ, then we were hitting the plus 10 dB compressor, and this one again has an input boost knob. You've got a release knob. You have a compressor attack that's fixed, and you can just select which one you want to use. There's also a limiter, I guess, built into this. And then you have mode as expansion or gate. And I didn't mess with that yet. Oh, that's for up here on top. Sorry, that's for the expander settings. Down here in the bottom is the compressor settings. So this will turn off. This will put it on expander mode or gate mode at the top if you want it. And you have expander attack. And then you also have the range of the expander. And then down on the bottom here is the compressor. All right, I'm gonna have to sign off here in a minute, guys, because we're getting close to an hour. But down on the bottom here is the compressor settings. And again, I have a release setting here. I have, this is the compressor attack. Here's the threshold for your compressor at which it will start compressing. And then here's your ratio. And I ended up choosing, what is that, the 5:1 setting, I think. And yep, 5:1 setting. And then this is GR is for the meter here, so you can see the gain reduction here. So here's what the vocal sounds like. Actually, Is that it? Yeah, that's it. All right, hold on. I'm going to answer this question quick from Brian. So the Gatey Weighty is a super cool plugin, and I think I did use it somewhere. I think I'm using it on the kick drum. So let me take, Brian asked about that, so let me go straight to that and see if we can answer that question. So Gatey Weighty is, make sure you guys can see it on the screen here. There's not always the best screen real estate for doing this, but I'll scoot it down right there. There you go. Sorry, it's going to cover up a couple of comments. Right now I'm using it in full frequency mode, and let me actually turn everything off here. So I'll engage this, which is doing nothing. Actually, this one is doing nothing. So I have the trim plug in there, basically at the ready to be used if I need it or to flip phase, but I ended up not doing anything with it, so it actually could just be off if I wanted it to. I'm not even boosting or cutting any gain. Then Gatey Weighty. So here's the kick without the Gatey Weighty. Pretty boxy, right? With Gatey Weighty on, it's cutting. Let's see what it's doing. Let's just see what it's doing. All right, so I'm going to point out what it's doing again in case you didn't hear that and it wasn't obvious. With the gate off, you're going to really hear the snare in between the kick hits. So you really notice the snare bleeding through. Whether you aesthetically decide that that's a problem or not, that's up to you and your mix. But in this case, I just decided to try and gate it out. Kevin says it sounds like it's flamming. You know what? That could be because it's not enough signal to cut this guy off all the way. So I'll try and mute this at the same time. Let me do it one more time. So this is the kick drum. I'll mute my mic here. This is the kick drum without the gate on it. Okay, now this is the kick drum with the gate on it, and notice that the snare should go away. So that's pretty cool. You know, this is a very, very effective gate. The way I've got it set up now is I found the threshold that seemed to work that would let the kick through, but would cut out the snare. I put it in full frequency mode, so you can have it gate out just the low frequencies or just the high frequencies or all the frequencies. And you can... you guys can hear me good. And the range here is how much do you want to turn down the snare. So let me do it again, and I'll adjust the range, and you should hear the snare go way away and then come back. It's interesting. Actually, when I crank up the range, it kind of affects the kick drum too. It's interesting. It's almost like it expands it in reverse. But you'll see the range knob here. Here, I'll zoom in on this. It's going to mess up your screen a little bit. But when I brought the range knob way down, then it was making the snare go away completely. And when I bring the range way up, it is making the snare drum not go away at all, but it was actually also kind of freaking out the kick drum. So there must be an interesting kind of gate circuit going on here. The attack is set relatively quickly, and that is so that when it's time to gate, it'll gate it pretty quickly. So you want to get in there and turn the level down before that snare hits. If you made this attack slower, it's not going to catch the beginning of the snare. It's going to catch maybe just the end of the snare or something like that. And then the release is, okay, now that we've gated out that snare, how soon do you want me to like let it go and let the sound come back through again? And that's where you can adjust the release so that it stays gated long enough to stays gated long enough to keep the snare out of the picture. Whereas if you had a very short release, you might have some of that snare come back in. So you could really sculpt some cool effects that way too if you wanted. So there it is. There's Gatey Weighty. And then just to show you again what I did, then the next thing I did is I EQ'd after that. I wonder if I lost my sidechain feature. Let me know if you guys are getting a flamming sound again with the two microphones. I'll give you a little sneak peek into my world of making this stuff work. You think mixing records is interesting? Wait till you start doing live streams. All right, so this is a ducker feature that I have going on that is supposed to duck this mic every time Pro Tools plays, but it might not be working, maybe because things are soloed too. But all right, so here's the, I'll try and just do my mute button while I do this. So here's the EQ on that kick. So it's gating it and then it's EQing it, and you can see I'm boosting some lows. Now this is not the 0 point. Remember, all the way down here is the 0 point. All the way down here. So I'm boosting a lot of lows, and then here I'm dipping. And when I come up from 0 to here, it's like I'm taking 8 to 9 dB of this frequency, which is, it doesn't show you, but I think that's about 300 to 250 hertz. I'm sucking that out of the kick drum, and then I'm boosting a lot of, you know, like 5K or something for the beater, and then I'm also boosting a lot of more of 5K right there. So, and these are both set to peak. So that's what's going on with this EQ, which is why it changes the sound of the kick so much. Here, I'll take it in and out. I'll bypass it and play the kick so you can hear it. All right, so hopefully you really heard that difference in the quality of the kick drum. Now, I'm the last one on the kick here too, and then I'll close out. I'll call it a day for today. But this is, again, showing you off Sasquatch Kick Machine, which is one of my favorite plugins from Boz. So I'm going to turn these guys off and bring them in one at a time so you can hear what it's doing. With all three off, I should actually hear nothing when I press play. Cool, and you can hear my mic because we hear nothing. But I'll turn my mic off and then I'll bring on the direct. Next, I will bring in the oomph button here and we'll see what that adds. And then lastly, I'm going to bring in the click here and we'll see what that's adding. All right, so listen once again. I'm going to turn off all these plugins and then I'm going to turn them all on and listen to just how transformed this kick goes from sounding like a cardboard box to sounding like a totally massive, awesome kick in your mix. And again, these are all just Boz Digital Labs plugins, just 3 of them right here. So here's off. And then here's on with all 3 of them. Oops, sorry, I left my mic on. Let me do that one more time. All right, now if you don't think that that sounds awesome, then you need to be listening on better headphones or better speakers or something, because that just sounds completely transformed. And I guarantee you it's not just louder. You know what I mean? It sounds awesome. So again, I highly suggest that you guys go check out Boz Digital Labs. Boz is making great plugins. They're very useful for your mixing. The one, again, my number one favorite is Sasquatch Kick Machine. And keep your ears peeled because there is some cool news coming down the pike about Sasquatch Kick Machine coming from Boz very, very soon. Yeah, so Kev says starts to sound like an 808 kick with the last plugin, but I need to hear it in the mix. You're absolutely right, Kevin. You can't make a judgment call on it all on its own. Just know that soloed like this, it's very cool to hear how it can transform stuff. If you're watching this on speakers on your iPhone, then the low frequency boom and boost that's going into that kick may be too subtle for you to really notice. You may not be picking up on it, but what's great is that when you are mixing and you're at that point of listening to the whole mix as a whole and trying to make a judgment call about the point on the kick drum or the beef in that kick drum, now you have a couple of knobs that you can literally just turn them on, add it, dial it a little bit more, and sculpt it without having to feel like you're EQing the snot out of your kick drum to try and get those things if they're not actually there in the first place. So again, Sasquatch Kick Machine is your secret weapon for getting cool kick sounds in your mix, rock stars. Thanks for watching this. Again, I'm Lid Shaw. This is Recording Studio Rockstars. Welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here and you want to learn how to record, edit, mix, master your best record, hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos from us here. And drop in a comment below too and let us know what you think about it all. So Kev's on what, I don't know those ones, man. Are those good headphones, Kev? Drop a link in. Let us know about them. If you think they're great and you want people to go check them out, just drop a link to the Blue Lolo headphones. And awesome. Thanks for watching, Rockstars. Again, I'll have a link in the show notes here to take you over to Boz Digital Labs, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Cheers. See if I can figure out how to turn this thing off. Come on now. Here we go.